Have you ever felt someone pulling invisible strings on your life, subtly twisting your words, disguising control as advice, or using guilt to steer your choices? In those moments, your chest tightens, your thoughts race, and you wonder how to stay free without being dragged into their game. The Stoics faced the same struggle, not against modern noise, but against the timeless hunger for power over others. Their answer was simple but profound. Silence, not weakness, not retreat, but the unshakable choice to guard your mind and dignity. This is where control ends and your freedom begins. As we step into the first chapter, picture the sting of words that cut without fairness, the kind that tighten your chest before you even know what's happening. A colleague points a finger at you for a mistake you never made. A friend reshapes a harmless remark into a story that paints you as the villain. In those moments, the blood rises. The urge to fight, to defend, to set the record straight burns hotter than fire. And yet, this is exactly where the battlefield of the Stoic begins. Now imagine yourself sitting at a family dinner. The table is full, the air thick with chatter and clinking cutlery. Out of nowhere, an uncle leans back and says with a smirk, "I'm surprised you're still getting by with your spending habits." The words land sharp. You feel the flush of injustice in your face. You want to unleash your record of every wise choice, every careful saving, every success that proves him wrong. You want to strike back with the memory of his failures. But a different path lies open, the path of silence, the path of mastery. The Stoics saw moments like this as training grounds. Seneca reminded us that insults are mirrors. They reveal more about the one who hurls them than the one who receives them. Emperor Hadrian wrote that it is not the words of others that wound us, but the weight we give them. You are not pierced by the sound itself. You are pierced by your decision to let it settle inside. That choice is yours, always yours. Think of it like a duel. One fighter swings wildly, exhausting himself with every blow. The other stands calm, steady, grounded. Who is stronger? The one who burns out in fury, or the one who needs no weapon to prove his strength? That is the lesson of silence. Your calm presence makes their noise heavier. Their attacks bounce back, revealing only their own weakness. But silence is not always dismissal. Sometimes it is reflection. What if, beneath that unfair comment, there is a sliver of truth worth examining? Not because they were right, but because you are wise enough to learn from anything. Could it be that your budget needs a sharper eye? Could your habits be refined? A Stoic never wastes an insult. Even lies can be tools if you know how to use them. Growth comes not from proving them wrong, but from making yourself stronger, no matter what they throw. Here's where the real shift happens. You no longer see criticism as poison, but as raw material. Most of it is mud, dirty, bitter, useless. But within mud sometimes lies a seed. The wise man plants it, grows from it, and leaves the mud behind. This is not weakness. This is power. The kind of power no critic expects you to wield. So when unfair words come, and they will, pause, breathe. Remember, Epictetus reminded us, it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You are free the moment you decide not to let their noise disturb your inner balance. That is the choice no one can take from you. Think again of that dinner table. Instead of firing back, you lift your glass slowly, take a sip, and let the silence expand. Your uncle fidgets. He expects a reaction, but none comes. He is left with his own echo, his own discomfort. The power shifts. Without raising your voice, without uttering a word, you have won. That is the invisible strike of composure. And what lingers after? Not the insult, not the noise, but the memory of your stillness, Others at that table remember it too. They remember your restraint, your calm, your refusal to be pulled into someone else's chaos. Respect grows in silence, where arguments would only have scattered it. The lesson is not easy. Every instinct will beg you to fight back, to defend your honor with words. But remember this: your honor is not theirs to give or take. It is yours to guard. And nothing guards it better than a calm refusal to be moved by noise. So ask yourself next time, is this really about me, or is it a mirror showing their insecurity? Can I find one fragment of wisdom in this sting and use it to sharpen myself? And most of all, what will silence say that words cannot? Let your calm be your rebuttal. Let your silence reveal their weakness. Let your composure become the mark you leave behind. Because in the end, the loudest defense is not the one shouted in anger, but the one lived in peace. And from this ground, we move forward to the next trial, the next subtle attempt at control, where the same weapon of silence waits, ready to prove its strength again. Moving into the second chapter, let us walk into a room not filled with conflict, but with a different kind of noise, the sound of self-celebration. You've been there before. One voice rises above the rest, weaving stories of success, brilliance, and triumph. The air grows heavy, not with hostility, but with the weight of one person's need to shine. And as you sit there listening, a quiet tension stirs within you, the pull to prove that you too are worthy, that you too have stories worth telling. Now, imagine this scene with greater clarity. You're at a long dinner table, glasses clinking, laughter scattered, the hum of conversations blending together. Then there's Victor. He dominates the evening, leaning in, voice polished, hands moving to punctuate every boast. He tells of his real estate victory, his meditation streak, his runs at dawn before the city even wakes. Each tale is a brick in the monument he is building to himself. And there you are, tempted to carve your own statue beside his. You feel your own quiet winds wanting to surface, those late nights you pushed through, the unseen battles you conquered, the silent achievements you carry with pride. But you stop. You do not speak. This is where stoicism enters like a steady hand on your shoulder. Marcus Aurelius whispered across centuries, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." His words are not an order, but a reminder. You don't need to correct the stage. You don't need to fight for applause. Real confidence has no hunger for recognition. True worth does not rush to compete. Here's where the inner test lies. Boasting tempts not just the ears, but the ego. It calls out, daring you to prove yourself, daring you to measure your value against another's performance. But that contest is a trap. For the moment you step in, you are no longer living by your own measure. You are dancing to someone else's music. And what is more exhausting than performing for an audience you do not respect? Seneca gives us the anchor here. It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence. Silence, when chosen in the presence of boasting, is not surrender. It is strategy. It is poise. It is the refusal to measure your worth by another's yardstick. Think of a mountain. Does it boast of its height? No. It simply stands, and in standing, it commands respect. Consider this. Victor speaks and speaks, his words climbing higher with every sentence. People smile politely, but their glances flicker, their patience thins. And you sit steady, listening, nodding, but unmoved. You don't interrupt, you don't compete, you don't scatter your quiet triumphs across the table for validation. Your silence radiates what he cannot fake: composure. In time, that composure will be remembered more than his noise. Epictetus deepened the lesson with his sharp edge. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because when you no longer need others to see you, you are finally free to see yourself. Growth happens in the quiet space where you choose presence over performance. It is in that space that you realize no one's applause can add to your worth, and no one's boasting can take from it. Let's return to the dinner table one last time. Victor finishes his tale with a flourish. The room waits. You smile, you raise your glass, maybe say a simple cheers, and nothing more. The silence is not empty, it is full. It speaks without effort. I do not need your stage to validate my journey. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the balance shifts. Those around you sense it. Respect, the quiet kind, settles where noise once lived. So the next time you find yourself surrounded by self-congratulation, do not rush to compete. Do not measure. Do not compare. Just breathe. Just listen. Just let the noise pass like wind against a mountain. Because sometimes the most powerful presence in the room is not the one that shouts the loudest, but the one that says nothing and still holds the weight of the room. From here, we step deeper into the practice of silence, into situations even more piercing than boasting, where restraint is not just a choice, but a shield, and composure becomes the sharpest weapon you possess. Advancing to the third chapter, let us step into the heat of a storm that rises not outside, but within. Anger. It comes like thunder breaking through a clear sky. One moment you are steady, the next your pulse is pounding, your chest is burning, and every word on your tongue is sharpened into a weapon you will later regret. We've all felt it, that split second when the world provokes us and reason seems to vanish. Yet the Stoics remind us that anger has no power unless we hand it the keys. Now imagine this. You are tired, worn down from a long day, standing in line at the grocery store. At last, your turn comes. Relief. But suddenly someone slips in front of you. No apology, no glance, just raw entitlement. You feel your fists tighten, your mind scripting comebacks with surgical precision. You can almost hear yourself explode, but then you pause. That pause is everything. In that small silence, you reclaim command of yourself. You realize the real insult isn't their rudeness. It's the danger of letting their act dictate your peace. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is the heart of it. The stranger's arrogance is not yours to carry. What belongs to you is the choice to let calm prevail. That pause is not retreat, it is control sharpened into presence. But let's go deeper. Anger feels like protection, but more often it is destruction in disguise. Think of the sharp words hurled at a colleague. Trust erodes. Think of the raised voice at a loved one. A wound remains long after the fire dies down. Seneca warned us of this truth. The damage caused by anger is almost always worse than the cause itself. What begins as defense ends as regret. That is why the Stoic does not banish anger by force. He tames it, reshapes it, turns it into discipline. Consider a story. A friend of mine once faced constant disrespect from a co-worker, sarcasm, interruptions, subtle digs in every meeting. One day, the co-worker crossed the line with a public insult. My friend felt the heat rise, ready to unleash a storm. But instead, he paused. He allowed silence to hang in the air. Everyone felt it. The weight of that silence exposed the pettiness of the insult more than any words could. Later, he addressed the issue calmly, firmly, without venom, and the respect he earned was far greater than any outburst could have won. Here's where Musonius Rufus enters the lesson. He taught that anger often springs from disappointed expectations. We expect fairness, and when life ignores our script, fury arrives. But if we adjust our expectations, if we accept that the world will rarely bend to our desires, anger loses its fuel. It cannot burn when there is nothing dry to ignite. This shift in perspective does not mean passivity. It means clarity. You still respond when wronged, but you do so from strength, not from blindness. So when anger surges, remember this: silence is not surrender, it is strategy. It buys you a moment to breathe, to think, to choose a path that does not sabotage your own dignity. That energy can be redirected into sharper focus, into wiser decisions, into actions that actually serve your life. Anger untamed consumes everything. Anger transformed builds strength. From here, the message is simple but hard. Do not let the storm inside rule you, the one who pauses when insulted, who breathes when provoked, who holds silence instead of rage. That one is untouchable. That one cannot be controlled. So the next time fury rises, stop. Let silence be your shield. Let calm be the answer the world did not expect. And let that composure carry you into the next test of character, where restraint will once again prove to be the sharpest weapon of all. At this stage, we walk into a battlefield where no swords are drawn, yet wounds cut deep. Rumors, they drift like smoke, seeping through halls, slipping into conversations, clinging to you long after the spark has faded. You don't know who started it. Maybe one careless whisper, maybe a deliberate twist. But suddenly, your name, your story, your character are no longer yours. They are being reshaped in the mouths of others, and you feel it, the sting, the heat, the urge to fight back. Now imagine the moment. You arrive at work, coffee in hand, ready for the day. A colleague avoids your gaze, another whispers as you pass. By lunchtime you hear it. They say you're the reason the project failed. A lie. You know it, yet the lie is already alive, carried on careless tongues. Your chest tightens, your mind scripts furious replies. You want to call a meeting, send an email, clear your name in bold letters. But pause. This is the test, not of your reputation, but of your composure. The Stoics faced this same trial in their own ways. Seneca wrote, "Time discovers truth." What he meant was simple but hard. Lies are fragile, but they live longer when you feed them. The instinct to defend yourself, to correct every false word, often does more harm than the rumor itself. You end up chasing shadows, proving your desperation instead of your innocence. But silence, that strange, difficult silence, becomes your weapon. Think of Marcus Aurelius, who reminded us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. What people say, how they twist, how they judge, these are outside events. They belong to them, not to you. But your response, that belongs entirely to you. In your silence, you prove mastery. You refuse to dance to their tune. You refuse to let them dictate your peace." Let me tell you a story. Years ago, a friend of mine worked in an office where competition was cutthroat. He was disciplined, quiet, focused, qualities that made him stand out. And because he stood out, jealousy followed. Soon, whispers began that he was manipulative, that he undermined teammates, that his successes came at others' expense. He was crushed. Every fiber of him wanted to fight back, to confront his accusers, but he chose silence. He kept working, kept delivering, kept embodying integrity, and over time, the lies collapsed. The same people who whispered against him eventually saw the truth, his results, his character, his composure. He never needed to shout. His silence shouted for him. That is the essence of Stoic power. Silence in the face of slander is not weakness, it is discipline. It is a refusal to dignify falsehood with your energy. And it is a bet placed on truth. Trusting that while lies may run fast, truth walks steady, and it always arrives. But let's be honest, silence in these moments feels unbearable. You fear that others believe the rumor that your name is being stained forever. You imagine doors closing, friendships faltering, trust disappearing, and in that fear you want to speak. Yet here is where the Stoic perspective saves you. Those who truly know you cannot be swayed by whispers, and those who are swayed were never yours to rely on. Epictetus sharpened this lesson when he said, "If evil is spoken of you, and it be true, correct yourself. If it be a lie, laugh at it." Do you see the freedom there? If the rumor has a grain of truth, you can grow from it. If it is false, you need not fight. In either case, your energy is not wasted on convincing others. It is invested in strengthening yourself. Imagine another scene. In your community, gossip begins. Someone claims you betrayed a trust. Neighbors look differently at you. The old you would rush door to door, pleading, explaining, exhausting yourself to fix what was never yours to control. But the Stoic you stays calm. You keep showing kindness, keep living with integrity, keep being who you are. Slowly, time reveals the cracks in the false story. The accuser's bitterness shows, the gossip fades, and what people remember is not the rumor. They remember your steadiness when slander tried to shake you. Let's be clear. Stoic silence does not mean accepting injustice forever. It does not mean letting lies rule unchecked. It means refusing to be dragged into the mud. It means focusing on what you can control, your work, your values, your integrity. If formal action is required, take it calmly. If the truth must eventually be clarified, do so with clarity, not desperation. But never let the rumor pull you into endless defense. That is not strength, that is surrender. Seneca also warned that anger and reaction only make matters worse. The consequences of anger are far more serious than its causes. The same is true of rumors. Often, the harm comes less from the lie itself and more from the way we scramble to fight it. The louder you shout, the more people wonder if the lie was true. The quieter you stand, the more people begin to question the rumor itself. Think of rumors as smoke. If you wave your arms wildly, you spread it further. If you remain still, the air clears. Silence is stillness, and stillness is strength. So here is the Stoic command. When rumors rise, resist the urge to fight them on their terms. Do not chase shadows. Do not let gossipers see your desperation. Stay rooted, stay quiet. Trust your character, trust time. And in that trust, you will win, not just over the rumor, but over yourself. Now, I want you to reflect on this in your own life. Have you faced false words before? Have you been the subject of whispers that felt unbearable? If so, you know the fire of that trial. And if you've endured it, you know also the power of outlasting it. Drop a simple word in the comments still. That single word is your testament, your reminder that while lies may fly, you stand unmoved. And if this message resonates, subscribe so you never miss the next lesson, because together we are practicing the art of living unshaken, mastering the discipline that no rumor can destroy. So the next time falsehood circles you like smoke, remember this: silence is not surrender. It is strength under control. It is the shield of those who know themselves. Rumors may pass, but character endures. And when the smoke clears, what remains is not the lie, but the stone of who you truly are. Advancing to the 5th chapter, we step into a silence unlike any other, the silence that follows loss. Not the silence of peace, not the quiet chosen for reflection, but the heavy hush that falls when something dear has been taken away. The world continues. Cars pass, conversations continue, laughter erupts in distant rooms. Yet inside, everything feels stopped. You are caught in a moment that will not move. A chair sits empty at the table. A dream once vivid fades to smoke, and your chest aches with a weight words cannot touch. Now imagine that moment more vividly. You wake up one morning and instinctively reach for your phone to send a message to someone who is no longer there. Your fingers freeze halfway, and the realization hits again, sharp and merciless. Or perhaps you walk by a familiar street corner, remembering plans you once made, plans that now hang unfinished. The air feels different, heavier. People smile and greet you as though nothing has changed. But inside, everything has changed. That is the cruel paradox of loss. Life goes on around you, while inside, it has stopped. The instinct in those moments is to escape, to drown grief in distraction, to cover it with noise, to bury it under work or entertainment or numbness. We fear silence because in silence we hear the echoes of what we lost. But the Stoics invite us to sit in that silence, not to flee, but to face it, to recognize grief not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Seneca once wrote, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." He was not telling us to wallow, but to acknowledge reality. Loss is woven into life itself. To deny it is to deny living. Let's step deeper. Epictetus reminds us, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The event itself, the passing of a loved one, the ending of a relationship, the collapse of a dream, is not within our control. What we can control is how we meet it. We often cling to what was, replaying moments, bargaining with the past. If only I had said this. If only I had done that. This resistance is what prolongs suffering. Grief is natural, but it deepens into torment when we insist the world should have been different. The Stoic way is to release that demand, to face what is with steady eyes. Pain will still be there, but alongside pain grows clarity. Here's where Marcus Aurelius offers comfort. In his Meditations, he wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." To him, loss was not an unnatural disruption, but part of the design of existence. Everything shifts, transforms, flows. What departs makes room for what arrives. This perspective does not erase grief, but it reframes it. The absence you feel is not the end of meaning. It is an invitation to find new meaning in what remains. Let me share a story. A woman I once knew lost her husband suddenly without warning. The weight of it shattered her. For months, she could not enter their bedroom without breaking down. Friends urged her to stay busy, to distract herself, to avoid the pain, but she chose differently. Each night she sat in the room alone, letting tears come, letting silence speak. Over time, that silence changed. It stopped being just a reminder of absence and became a place of presence, where she reflected on the love they had shared, the lessons his life left behind, the strength she would now need to carry. She said later, "The silence didn't take him away from me. It gave me back to myself." That is what Stoic silence does. It transforms grief into depth. Loss is not weakness. Grief is the cost of love, of connection, of caring deeply. The pain you feel is proof that what you lost mattered profoundly. Do not mistake it for failure. Seneca once said, "The day we fear as our last is but the birthday of eternity. Death, endings, partings, they are not annihilation, but transformation. To lose is to be reminded that life was never ours to possess, only to experience. To grieve is to honor the value of what was, even as it changes form. But how do we live with it? How do we stand when grief threatens to crush us?" The Stoics suggest a practice of perspective. Instead of asking, "Why was this taken from me?" ask, "What did I have the fortune to experience, however briefly?" Gratitude does not erase pain, but it softens its sharpness. It reminds us that loss cannot erase the meaning of what once was. If you loved, that love remains carved into you. If you dreamed, that dream shaped your soul. If you built, the effort lives on in your character. Nothing is ever truly gone. It is carried forward within you. Imagine again, you lose a job that defined your sense of purpose. At first, despair. You feel stripped of identity. Yet with time you begin to see what remains is not just the loss, but the skills you gained, the discipline you built, the courage that will carry you into the next chapter. Or you lose a friend you thought would walk beside you for life. The grief cuts deep. Yet slowly you realize the laughter, the lessons, the memories, these live on. And because they live on, you are not left empty. You are left with a new responsibility to honor what was by how you live now. Here's the deeper Stoic truth. Silence in loss is not emptiness. It is a vessel, a space carved out by pain, waiting to be filled with reflection, with resilience, with a new kind of strength. The silence hurts at first because it reminds you of absence. But with time, it becomes the soil in which growth takes root. Out of silence comes wisdom. Out of grief comes depth. Out of endings comes transformation. Marcus Aurelius faced the death of children, the betrayal of friends, the collapse of hopes. He did not deny the pain. He wrote through it, reflected on it, carried it. He found in it a reason to live with greater virtue, greater gratitude. His lesson to us is simple. You cannot stop loss, but you can decide what it shapes in you. Will it break you into bitterness or carve you into strength? So when loss arrives, and it will for every one of us, do not rush to cover it with noise. Sit with it, breathe through it. Let it carve its lines into your soul, for those lines will become depth, and depth will become wisdom. Do not carry your loss as a chain. Carry it as a chapter, one that lives inside you and shapes the rest of your journey. Grief will change you. That is inevitable. The choice is whether it hardens you or deepens you. The Stoics urge us to let it deepen us, to let sorrow remind us of the preciousness of every moment still given, to let absence sharpen our gratitude for presence, to let endings remind us to live more fully while we can. Loss visits all. But how you meet it defines who you become. When grief comes, let silence be your teacher. Let patience be your companion. And when the silence has done its work, rise, not as who you were before, but as someone stronger, deeper, truer. Carry what you lost, not as a burden to weigh you down, but as part of the path that carries you forward. Because in the end, loss does not diminish you. It shapes you. And though the world may rush on, though others may never see the battle you fight, you will know. You have endured the silence, and you have emerged with a strength no loss can take away. Entering the 6th chapter, we meet a challenge not of violence, not of betrayal, but of sheer noise, the kind of noise that comes from ignorance wrapped in confidence. We have all seen it. A colleague standing tall in a meeting, explaining with pride what you know to be false. An online stranger typing with fire, fueled not by facts, but by certainty. At first, it makes you laugh. Then, if you are not careful, it makes you angry. But here is where the Stoic draws the line. This is the training ground not for clever replies, but for discipline. Now imagine the scene. You are at work. A project is stalling, and the team is searching for solutions. A man across the table leans in, his voice firm, his tone heavy with confidence. He delivers instructions that you instantly recognize as flawed. Every instinct in you wants to jump, to correct, to dismantle his illusion in front of everyone. Your pride whispers, "Show them you know better. Show them who really understands." But then another voice enters, the voice of restraint. What do you gain by humiliating him? What do you gain by feeding your ego with a swift victory? That pause is the difference between the untrained and the disciplined. The Stoics taught that ignorance is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a mirror in which to test yourself. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against what is said, but answer, 'He evidently did not know my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these.'" That lesson extends further. When people speak wrongly, it is not always your duty to correct them. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is in letting the weight of their words collapse on its own. But there are moments when silence is not the only answer. Consider Socrates, not a Stoic, yet revered by them. He never stormed into arguments with rage. He asked questions, simple, piercing questions that turned certainty into doubt. What makes you so sure? Have you considered another angle? These words carried no hostility, no pride, yet they cut deeper than accusations. They led others to unravel their own logic. Socrates did not conquer his opponents. He let them stumble into their own contradictions. Picture yourself trying this. You are faced with a friend who insists on some baseless claim, their voice growing louder with every sentence. Instead of clashing with them, you lean back and ask gently, "What makes you certain of that?" The question lingers. It does not confront, it invites. It places the burden not on your shoulders, but on theirs. Whether they rise to meet it or not is beyond your control. But you have preserved your dignity, your calm, your center. And what if they refuse? What if, like so many, they cling harder to their illusion when challenged? Here is where Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Their stubbornness is not yours to fix. Their refusal is not your failure. You can leave the truth standing, untarnished by the need for applause. You can walk away with your energy intact. Think of Aristarchus, the Greek astronomer who first suggested that the Earth moved around the sun. He was ignored, dismissed, even mocked. But he did not waste his life in endless debates with those who refused to see. He left the truth where it belonged, and centuries later, the world recognized it. What if he had screamed in frustration, burned his peace in arguments with closed ears? Instead, he let time be the ally of truth. That is a Stoic choice. To trust that truth, like virtue, does not require shouting to endure. Ignorance will always exist. It will dress itself in authority, in confidence, in passion. Sometimes it will even wear the mask of kindness. You cannot remove it from the world, but you can choose how you meet it. Do you let it pull you into frustration, leaving you drained and bitter, or do you use it as a chance to practice patience, restraint, and grace? The Stoic chooses the latter. Seneca once warned that arguing with fools is like wrestling with the mud. You both get dirty, and the crowd may not know who is who. When you find yourself in that position, remember, your silence is not surrender. It is elevation. It tells the world, and more importantly yourself, I am not bound to every challenge. I am not a slave to my pride. That decision, though small, strengthens the mind like training strengthens the body. Let me share another story. A young man once found himself drawn into online debates. Every night he argued, corrected, typed furiously. He felt victorious when he silenced a commenter with logic, but inside he was exhausted. His peace was shattered. His nights ended in frustration, not growth. One day he read Epictetus. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. That struck him deeply. He realized he was fighting shadows, trying to force truth on those who could not receive it. So he stopped. He began choosing silence. And in doing so, he reclaimed his nights, his peace, his focus. He grew not by winning debates, but by mastering himself. This is the essence of navigating ignorance with stoic grace. You cannot enlighten every mind. You cannot fight every falsehood. But you can guard your spirit. You can choose which battles are worthy of your energy. You can ask questions instead of attacking. You can remain silent when silence is wiser than speech. And above all, you can refuse to let ignorance pull you away from your own path. Now imagine the power of this in daily life. You are surrounded by noise, at work, online, even in your family. Opinions clash, voices rise, falsehoods spread. Yet there you are, calm, composed, unshaken. You do not react to every provocation. You do not waste yourself in proving others wrong. You carry yourself with quiet authority, and that authority speaks louder than any argument. People may not always say it, but they feel it. Your steadiness sets you apart. So, when the next wave of ignorance comes at you with confidence, pause, breathe. Ask a question if the moment allows. If not, stay silent. If silence is not enough, then walk away. Let the truth stand without your defense, because it does not need your rage to survive. Remember this: wisdom is not about proving others wrong. It is about proving to yourself that you can remain unbroken. At this stage, the lesson is clear. Ignorance is not a threat to your strength. It is the stage on which your strength is tested. To lose patience is to lose yourself. To keep calm is to win a victory no one can take. The Stoic does not fear ignorance. They use it. They let it forge patience, humility, and composure. And in that quiet mastery, they reveal a truth deeper than any argument. Real wisdom has no need to shout. At this stage, we enter one of the most unsettling trials of human life. The moment when you realize you're no longer just living your story, but starring in someone else's fiction. Whispers begin to move around you like shadows, a phrase pulled out of context. A misunderstanding repeated without care, a judgment framed as fact. Before long, the whispers grow into narratives, and those narratives take on a life of their own. You are there, living your truth, while others carry your name in their mouths, reshaping it into something unrecognizable, and it is maddening. Now imagine it in sharp detail. You walk into a room and conversations dip. You notice a sideways glance, a hesitant smile, the subtle shift in tone when someone greets you. You don't need to hear the words, you can feel them. Rumors don't just spread in speech, they hang in the air, altering the atmosphere around you. And inside, your blood surges. Your first instinct is to demand answers. To corner the storytellers, to defend your honor, to explain yourself until the lie suffocates. But pause. Ask yourself, has this ever worked? When was the last time explaining to those committed to misunderstanding you actually set you free? Here's where the Stoics step in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who did the injury." In other words, the path of dignity is not to mirror your accusers, not to descend into their noise, but to live in such a way that their words collapse under the weight of your character. Rumors thrive on reaction, they feed on outrage, on endless attempts to correct them. But silence, chosen with strength, starves them. Consider the story of Elias, a mentor who gave his life to guiding underprivileged youth. He stayed late, sacrificed weekends, even used his own money to fund workshops. His devotion was unquestionable until one bitter student, angry about a failing grade, began whispering that Elias was biased. The rumor spread like fire on dry leaves. Parents began to doubt, students hesitated, colleagues wavered. The man who had built a legacy of service suddenly found himself surrounded by suspicion. What could Elias have done? He could have fought back, drafting statements, holding meetings, confronting the accuser with fury. But he chose differently. He let his actions continue to speak. He kept mentoring. He kept showing up, steady and unshaken. Slowly, truth began its patient work. The same parents saw results in their children. Students defended him. Colleagues remembered his unwavering record. And the rumor, once fierce, dissolved into silence. Elias understood what Seneca meant when he said, "Time discovers truth. For lies may run, but they cannot endure." This is not just Elias's story, it is a mirror held up to all of us. How often have you let someone's careless words hijack your peace? How often have you wasted nights replaying accusations, crafting imaginary comebacks, fighting shadows that only grew darker the more you struck them? Rumors test more than reputation. They test the fortress of your inner life. Epictetus gave us a piercing clarity. If evil is spoken of you, and it be true, correct yourself. If it be false, why be disturbed? Simple, but hard. If the rumor has merit, it is a chance to grow. If it is baseless, then why bleed yourself dry, defending against nothing? The Stoic response is not indifference, it is mastery. It is refusing to hand your serenity over to the noise of others. Now, imagine another scenario. A woman in a small community finds herself accused of disloyalty. The whispers sting. She is tempted to confront her neighbors, to write long letters explaining herself. But she remembers the Stoic way. She pauses, she steadies herself, and she continues her life with integrity. Weeks pass, months. The whisperers grow bored. Their invention has no fuel. Her composure speaks louder than any denial could have. And in the end, people remember not the rumor, but her calm endurance. That is the power of silence chosen with intention. But let us go deeper. Why do rumors cut so deep? Because they rob us of control. You cannot command the mouths of others. You cannot police every retelling. You cannot drag the truth into every room. This helplessness is what enrages us. Yet Marcus Aurelius taught, you have power over your mind, not outside events. The rumor is outside event, beyond your grasp. What remains in your grasp is your response, and your response is everything. Here's a practical truth. When you chase rumors, you validate them. When you argue with slander, you amplify it. Anger pours fuel onto the fire. But when you stand silent, grounded, and let your character speak through consistency, the fire runs out of air. This does not mean you never act. It means you act with discipline, not desperation. If a lie requires formal clarification, you deliver it calmly, without venom. If the rumor is absurd, you let time expose it. In either case, you keep your dignity intact. Let me offer another story. Centuries ago, the philosopher Aristarchus proposed that the earth moved around the sun. His idea was ridiculed, dismissed as madness. He could have wasted his life fighting detractors, defending his truth in endless arguments. Instead, he left the truth where it stood. He did not scream to be heard. He let time reveal what was already real. Today, his name endures as a pioneer. The lesson is clear. Truth does not need shouting. So how do you deal with rumors? First, master your emotions. Feel the sting, but do not let it drive your decisions. Reaction feeds falsehood. Composure starves it. Second, stay the course. Keep living with clarity. Keep working with integrity. Keep showing who you are through deeds, not defenses. Third, trust time. Lies may run fast, but they stumble under the weight of consistency. Truth walks slowly, but it always arrives. And above all, remember this: you do not owe clarity to those committed to misunderstanding you. Some people do not seek truth. They seek drama. They will not be convinced by evidence, but they can be disarmed by your calm refusal to play their game. By walking away with dignity, you remind yourself and them that your life is not defined by their words. As Seneca advised, a good character, when established, is not easily overthrown. Your task is not to silence every rumor. It is to cultivate a character so steady, so unshaken, that rumors pass like wind against a mountain. The wind howls, the mountain remains. So the next time whispers rise against you, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Let your silence echo louder than their noise. Let your life testify more clearly than your words. And walk forward, not with fear, not with anger, but with purpose. Because in the end, it is not the rumor that defines you, it is your response. And when your response is calm, disciplined, and dignified, no whisper can stain what time and truth will eventually reveal. Entering the 8th chapter, we walk into one of life's hardest rooms, the one where fairness does not exist. You can labor with diligence, live with honesty, give with kindness, and yet still watch as your efforts are dismissed, your name omitted, or your trust betrayed. That is injustice. It cuts deeper than simple loss because it wounds not only what you have, but what you believe should be. And when it arrives, the first surge inside you is rage. The instinct to lash back, to demand what is rightfully yours, to set the record straight. Yet the Stoics ask a different question. Will your reaction serve you, or will it rob you of your peace? Now picture this scene. Arman, a young researcher, pours his entire being into a groundbreaking idea. He spends a year in quiet toil, long nights, endless revisions, the pursuit of clarity that only true devotion creates. Finally, the unveiling comes. The world is ready. But when the curtain rises, it is not his name that shines. His supervisor steps forward, presenting the work as his own. The applause echoes. Arman's name is nowhere. The injustice burns like fire in his chest. The urge to cry out is almost unbearable, yet he remains still. He chooses not to erupt, not to poison his own future with public rage. He continues to do what he does best, creating, building, excelling. And in time, his consistency carves out a reputation no thief of credit can erase. Seneca once wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Injustice is that friction. It grinds against your spirit, threatening to wear you down. But if you endure it with discipline, it polishes you into something harder, sharper, more radiant. The trial that could have broken you becomes the very fire that refines you. Here's where the lesson deepens. Stoicism does not tell you to smile at mistreatment, to pretend betrayal doesn't hurt. It does hurt. It enrages. But wisdom lies in how you direct that fire. Anger, when unleashed, often makes you appear small, emotional, reactive, vulnerable. Even when you are right, fury can cloud the justice of your cause. But calm carries weight. Calm commands respect. Calm makes the injustice visible for what it is, while you stand untouched by its stain. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That is the hinge. You cannot control whether someone lies about you, robs you of credit, or slams the door you deserve to walk through, but you can control how you meet it. Do you let their actions master you, or do you remain the master of yourself? Imagine another story. A woman applies for a promotion. She has the qualifications, the results, the trust of her team, but the position goes to another, not because he is better, but because he is favored. The injustice strikes like a blade. She is tempted to storm out, to resign, to tear down the walls around her. Instead, she steadies herself. She continues her work, continues to build excellence so undeniable it cannot be ignored. Months later, her consistency speaks louder than favoritism. The injustice is remembered only as the backdrop against which her resilience shone. Epictetus taught, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the ground of power. Injustice tempts you to lose yourself in the fight. But when you anchor your response in virtue, the injustice no longer owns you. You may not change the outcome immediately, but you preserve something far greater, your integrity. Here's the paradox. Ignoring injustice does not mean accepting it. It means choosing the long game. It means letting your results speak instead of your resentment. It means trusting that dignity has a louder voice than rage. When you meet unfairness with patience, you don't erase the wrong, you outlast it. Think of water against stone. The stone seems unmovable, imposing, unjust. Yet the water does not rage. It flows, steady, persistent. Over time, the stone yields. That is the Stoic way of confronting injustice, not with frantic strikes, but with unwavering persistence. And yes, there are times when action must be taken. Stoicism does not forbid justice. It forbids losing yourself in the pursuit of it. If you must speak, speak with clarity, not venom. If you must stand, stand with calm strength, not reckless fury. The difference is subtle but profound. One approach wastes energy and erodes your dignity. The other builds your presence and leaves a mark that cannot be denied. Seneca also said, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Injustice lures you into suffering twice, once from the wrong itself, and once from the torment of replaying it, fuming over it, letting it consume your days. The Stoic refuses the second wound. They feel the sting, but they do not nurse it into an infection. They breathe, they steady, they move forward. Now imagine yourself facing injustice. You are overlooked, you are misjudged, you are betrayed. What do? The easy answer is rage. The harder, nobler answer is restraint. To pause, to ask yourself, what response honors my character, not just my emotions? That question shifts the ground beneath you. It pulls you out of reaction and into choice. And choice is freedom. At this stage, we see the deeper truth. Injustice will always exist. No system, no world, no relationship is free of it. But your peace does not depend on a perfect world. It depends on a disciplined heart. If you let injustice dictate your spirit, you will be enslaved by every slight, every betrayal, every theft of credit. But if you choose mastery, silence when silence is wiser, calm when calm is stronger, action when action is truly necessary, then injustice becomes not your master, but your teacher. So the next time you are dealt an unfair hand, do not let fury drive you. Take a breath, feel the fire, but do not be consumed by it. Ask yourself, what would the stronger version of me do here? Then do that. Because in the end, injustice is not what defines you. Your response is. And the quiet strength of restraint often leaves the deepest impression, an impression no thief, no liar, no betrayer can ever take away. Advancing into the 9th chapter, we enter a battlefield without weapons, a space where the wounds are carved not by steel but by words, insults, sharp, careless, sometimes calculated, sometimes thoughtless, but always aimed at one thing, your peace. And here lies the paradox. They only wound you if you decide to carry them. The Stoics knew this well. They practiced a form of strength that did not shout back, did not scramble for comebacks, but stood rooted in silence, unshaken by provocation. Now, imagine this. You are in a meeting, presenting your work, when a colleague interrupts with a smirk, tossing out a comment meant to diminish you in front of others. Laughter ripples through the room. Your heart surges. A dozen responses flash in your mind, sharp, clever, devastating. But then you pause, you breathe, you let the silence hang. The room shifts. Suddenly, the weight of his insult rests not on you, but on him. Your stillness exposes his noise. And in that moment you realize real strength is not in the retort, but in the refusal. Epictetus once said, if someone provokes you, it's because your mind is complicit in the provocation. At first, these words sound harsh, almost like blame, but look deeper and you'll see freedom. Because if your mind has a role, then your mind has the power. You can decide not to give their words a home. You can decide to let them pass through you, like wind through an open field. The insult is the arrow. Your choice is whether it pierces or falls. How many times in your life have you replayed a careless remark again and again, crafting the perfect comeback long after the moment has passed? That is the trap of insult. It makes you carry it longer than it deserves. But the Stoic does not waste energy that way. They do not build monuments to other people's words. They breathe, they observe, they let it go. Take Clara, a community leader known for her calm presence. She has stood in public meetings where critics hurled accusations, seen her words twisted by the media, faced hostility from those who resented her message. She could have fought every insult, engaged every critic, turned every barb into a battlefield. But she didn't. She chose silence. She stayed focused on her mission, let her work stand taller than her words. And over time, even those who had mocked her were forced to admit her silence was not weakness, it was wisdom. Here's where power reveals itself. When you refuse to react, you deny the aggressor their victory. An insult is bait. Take it, and they win. Leave it, and they are left wrestling with their own echo. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." That is stoicism in practice. You do not hand over your self-respect to another's tongue. You guard it, quietly, firmly. But let's step deeper. Why do insults sting? Because they strike at our pride. They press on our need for recognition, for fairness, for validation. And yet, Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. Why should the careless jab of one, or even the chorus of many, outweigh the truth you know about yourself? Imagine another story. A craftsman works day after day on his art. One passerby scoffs, "That's worthless." Another sneers, "You'll never be remembered." He could throw down his tools, shout at them, waste his energy on their contempt. But instead, he keeps carving. Years later, his work endures, his critics forgotten. The insult vanished the moment it was spoken, but his silence turned into legacy. This is the lesson. An insult has no roots unless you plant them. It is sound, nothing more. To respond with fury is to water it, to let it grow in your heart. To remain calm is to let it die at your feet. Of course, silence is not always easy. The world today thrives on reaction. Online comments, family arguments, workplace jabs, all designed to provoke. You are told that to stay silent is to lose, to appear weak. But the Stoic redefines victory. Victory is not in shouting louder. Victory is in walking away with your dignity intact, your mind unshaken, your focus undisturbed. Seneca offered a simple truth. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. The insult itself is small. It is our imagination that enlarges it, replaying, magnifying, carrying it longer than it deserves. When you let go, you shrink it back to its true size, nothing. So here is the practice. The next time someone's words cut at you, pause, breathe, let the silence carry your answer. If you must speak, speak softly, without venom, or choose not to speak at all. Sometimes the most eloquent response is none. Sometimes silence says, I know who I am, and your words cannot change that. And think of this. In a world where everyone scrambles to be heard, to prove, to argue, to win, what stands out most is the one who does not scramble, the one who remains calm, the one who does not need the last word because their presence speaks louder than their voice. That is Stoic silence. Not passive, not fearful, powerful, grounded, unshakable. At this stage, as we close this journey through 9 moments of silence, one truth resounds. Wisdom is not about conquering every voice. It is about mastering your own. Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, they all return to this. The greatest victory is self-mastery. An insult cannot take that from you. Only you can give it away. So imagine from now on, when insults come, and they will, you do not rush to fight. You do not replay them in your mind. You smile. You breathe. You let their words vanish like echoes fading in an empty canyon, and you walk forward, lighter, freer, untouchable. That is Stoic wisdom in its purest form. To know when to speak, and more importantly, when to say nothing at all. So when someone tries to shake your peace, pause, breathe, and let silence be your strength. Share your journey by commenting "Calm Power." If these words resonate, subscribe and walk this path with us. You are stronger than you know, and the next reflection will take you deeper